Hello everyone, my name is Carlos. I'm a game developer, photographer, and watch enthusiast, and today I want to show you this Helm Komodo in titanium. So on my wrist today, I am wearing the Helm Komodo in titanium. This is a pretty awesome and pretty affordable 300-meter ISO certified diver that looks pretty good and is built completely in titanium. It's an automatic watch. It sports an NH35, and the overall price of this watch is a little over $400 with shipping. So for anybody looking for a diver that's properly ISO certified, is made out of titanium and looks pretty good, sporting a good reliable workhorse movement such as the NH35, the Helm Komodo in titanium might be an awesome deal for you. Before we get too much into the details of the watch, there's some things that are worth noting about Helm. Helm, the microbrand, is a microbrand that is supposed to be out of North Carolina, but really their watches are made in China and shipped from China. So if you purchase a Helm watch, even though it says they're a North Carolina company, just know that you're going to get a package from China. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's good to point that out because while there's a lot of people that really hype Helm and compare them to much more expensive brands like Tudor, for example, or even Rolex, the reality is that Helm, like other watches in the price range and other micro brands, they use Chinese factories to make their watches, and the watches have a lot of the common QC problems that you see with watches that are basically mass produced in a factory. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that Helm mass produces the watches, but I think they do use probably a pretty big watch factory that produces a lot of watches. It's a pretty odd thing about Helm, the fact that they have like this super crazy hype, these super high expectations for the product that they deliver, and like this really bizarre waitlist program that you kind of have to play into in order to get one of their watches. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I would like to make more of this content more often. And honestly, seeing the channel grow and getting those views, getting those likes, and having that subscription, really encourages me to continue to spend my money on these watches, which I love, and continue to share that love with you guys. Now back to the video. So those are my thoughts on Helm, the company, and things that I feel that you as a consumer should know. But let's get back to the watch. The first thing that I usually look for in a watch whenever I'm really trying to decide whether this is a good product or not is the fit and finish. The fit and finish on this diver is okay for the price. But the big thing to know about the fit and finish is that the whole watch is basically just satinized. So there's not like combination of finishes. You would have to look pretty hard on this watch to find anything that's been actually polished. There's pretty much only one finish across all of the metal surfaces, and that is satin. I think for the most part, it looks pretty good as far as finish goes. And I think that it is kind of nice if that's what you're into. If you want like a watch that's basically just completely utilitarian and you don't want any quote unquote bling on your watch. So as far as the quality of the fit and finish, there's definitely some problems in the fit, mostly around the lugs and the bracelet. But for the most part, I think the finish is pretty adequate for a watch that is $400. Fit, we'll get into that in a little bit. Once we move on to the dial, you basically find that this dial has a pretty minimalistic style. It does have overlaid markers, which I'm a big fan of. But other than that, it's a pretty simple dial. It basically just has the Helm logo, and then it has the diver's 300-meter automatic at the bottom. Very minimalist, very clean. And one thing that I did notice once I got into the macro is that even though the dial looks mostly flat, it does have a small amount of like sort of bead blasted finish, which my guess is that it helps make the watch look a little bit more matte. But just know that like if you look closely into the dial, there is a little bit of texture in the dial, even though it's almost invisible to the naked eye. One thing that's interesting about the dial that's different from like, let's say, Seiko watches in a similar price range is that this watch doesn't actually have a chapter ring, and it looks like basically has sort of like a track ring that's basically either glued on top of the dial or maybe it's part of the dial. But it's a little bizarre. When you look at it up close, it looks a little cheap. And then it has the minute and hour markers kind of printed right onto it. And the quality of the printing on their macro is not the greatest. But to the naked eye, all of these details look pretty great. The second hand is pretty cool because it has a little little yellow hint that I think makes it just really pretty, and it just goes really well with the watch. So let's talk a little bit about the bracelet. So the bracelet itself, not including the end links, is for the most part pretty nice. Most of the links have screws, so it's gonna be very easy for you to like make the bracelet the right size at home. And Helm's even nice enough to give you like a little screwdriver that fits those little screws perfectly. So that's something that's really nice. One of the things that I really like about the titanium bracelet is that every single link is actually independent, unlike other watches where like the center link and the outside link are kind of like one piece. It just gives it a large range of motion, which makes it comfortable. It doesn't really pull any hair, which is nice. For the most part, the bracelet, I think it's pretty nice. However, the end links are atrocious. And while the end links look nice and they're finished nicely, the end links for my particular watch just were almost impossible to fit. I got into the situation where I would be able to get one end of the spring bar to actually fit in the hole of the lug. But the other one, while it was in the area, it just refused to latch on, which meant that the end links were kind of loose and rattly because they literally both sides wouldn't clip into place. This was an incredibly frustrating experience to try to fix this. I literally fought this watch just to put those end links, even though I have all the tools, just the lugs don't line up correctly with the end links, like they don't. So I spent like about an hour just fighting this watch, and because it's all titanium and it scratches relatively easily, like you're probably gonna put some scratches on it simply trying to get this thing to work regardless of what you're doing, because it's not about a lack of tools, it's just the drilled lugs do not line up with the end links correctly, at least not on mine. So that was super frustrating. The other thing that's also kind of nasty is that, and this is the same thing with the Helm Miyako. If you guys are interested in a review for the Helm Miyako, you can check it out here. But the Helm Miyako, a slightly more dressier diver from Helm, has the same problem that this guy does, and that is that the gap between the end links and the lugs is like huge. Like it's just the end links are just not properly fit to this watch. Once again, these are details that you will not notice when just wearing the watch on an everyday basis with the naked eye. But when you sit and look at the details and you look at the macro and you try to get an idea of like what is the fit and finish of these things, these lugs and end links are a mess. And this is probably one of the ugliest parts of the watch. Just from a user experience, having to fight an end link that simply won't latch into place for hours is just not a fun experience. And there's times where you think you got it and like the thing would literally pop off as you're wearing it. So it also doesn't make it seem like the watch is gonna be very secure. So if you get this watch and you put the bracelet on, definitely make sure to pay attention to the spring bars and make sure that the spring bars are fully engaged with the drill lugs so that you don't have any problems. With all of that said, let's get into the clasp. The clasp is, once again, okay. It is a milled clasp. The actual entirety of the clasp is milled, which is nice. There's not really any stamp components other from like the tiny little security latch. One of the things that's a little disappointing about this particular clasp is that it doesn't have like any release buttons. It seems to use ball bearings to actually lock the clasp in place. So it's all kind of a friction fit, you know, pop on, pop off kind of thing. And I think that because it doesn't have buttons and it just kind of uses this friction system, that's one of the reasons why they put this little like sort of safety latch that has the Helm logo on it, which is nice and works great. But at the same time, when it comes loose, it's basically gonna be titanium, hitting titanium all the time. So it's like a little flappy piece of metal that is just there almost to like scratch your watch. The good news about the clasp is that it has like an immense amount of micro adjustment. So you're probably going to get like a very comfortable fit. And for the most part, I think like both the bracelet and the clasp are livable, but the problem with the lugs is a big problem. And just to wrap up my thoughts on the bracelet altogether, you know, one of the things to know about Helm watches is that when you purchase a Helm watch, they all come with a bracelet and with an optional NATO strap. But I don't think that they ever test the bracelet to the watch, because when they ship you the watch, you will receive it in the NATO, and then you will have the bracelet off to the side, completely wrapped. So there is a good chance that these straps have been created and never actually test fitted or quality controlled to make sure that things like the spring bars and the lugs and the end links are gonna line up to each other. So once again, one of the downsides of buying these sort of cheap Chinese-made watches is that people cut corners, and this is one way in which people cut corners. All right, so really quickly, let's get into the accuracy of this watch. So I do test all of my watches, especially when I take the time to review them. I put them on a time grapher. I don't think the time grapher tells the whole story, but just for those of you that are interested in the nerdy side of timekeeping, over 6 positions, this watch basically averaged about plus 2.5 seconds per day. And it had a deviation of about 17 seconds between the slowest position and the fastest position. So basically the extreme of timekeeping within the slowest and the highest score position-wise was about 17 seconds. So this particular movement would not necessarily be great for regulation, but an average of 2.5 seconds a day is not bad. And to be honest, the first week that I wore it, this thing did not lose any time over 4 days. I think that the first day it lost maybe like 3 seconds, but then for the next 3 days, it didn't lose any time at all. So I think that as far as accuracy goes, like as long as you're happy with the average accuracy of a decent NH35 that's in good health, then I think that you'll be pretty happy with the accuracy of this watch. All right, so this price of this watch is $375, but then you have to pay basically $35 for shipping. So without tax, just expect this watch to be about $400, $410, and then add taxes. I got a couple of extra straps with it. By the way, shout out to the white rubber strap. It looks amazing in the wrist, but the white rubber strap did get stained by my dark denim blue jeans. So just know if you wear dark blue jeans, these white rubber straps will not stay white for long, and they're a pain in the butt to clean. You're probably better off buying a new one. So let's really quickly get into the things that I absolutely love about this watch. To be honest, like the color blocking, beautiful. I am a sucker for divers with white dials and black bezels. I think it's a super elegant combination. There's something that I really love about it. I really like the simplicity and readability of the dial. And I really like the bracelet in the fact that all of the links are independent. That part is awesome. I like that it's fit with screws and I don't have to punch pins out in order to like refit the bracelet. And the overall look of the watch, I think it's kind of weird. Like the watch is a tool watch. It's kind of a budget, quasi-serious diver, being that it's ISO certified. But the overall vibe of the watch, it feels like a toy. And add to that the feel of titanium. The fact that it's a toy, or the fact that it looks like a toy, is something that you might not like, but it's something that honestly, for me, makes the watch playful. And I like playful watches. So I actually really love the overall vibe and presentation and minimalism. And the fact that it feels kind of toyish is something that I like. You don't have to take yourself so seriously all the time. It's okay to wear something that just makes you feel good about yourself, something that just makes your inner child happy. And I think that this design for me kind of taps into that. Like, it's a serious dive watch, but it kind of has a cartoony, fun vibe to it. And I really like that. I really like the way that the sapphire bezel and the printing sort of play with that high contrast, simple, cartoony, fun, but under the hood and on paper, kind of like serious, you know? So I really like that aspect of the watch. And if you're sort of having those same vibes with that watch, where you feel like, hey, like I really like the design, I think you're gonna be super happy with this watch. I think that's gonna be really like the make or break for most people. It's gonna be how much do you vibe with this design in order to pay $400 out the door. So the last thing that I'll mention that I kind of really like about this watch is actually the bezel. And I think the bezel action is something that Helm for the most part does pretty well. They're super clicky. So let's just take a quick listen to this. It's pretty awesome. Definitely springy, definitely, you know, it stops very immediate, not a lot of over travel, and the chapter ring lines up. So that's pretty awesome, and it looks great. All right, so let's get into a list of dislikes. Obviously the lugs by far the worst thing of this watch. Just as I said, the gaps between the lugs and the end links. Nobody wants to fight the bracelet. Once you've gotten the spring bars in, they should latch on relatively quickly inside the holes. And as I mentioned before, I really like it on that white strap, but after putting it on the titanium bracelet, like I kind of don't want to take it off to put the fun white strap that I really like, simply because I don't want to deal with these stupid end links again. Like, in a way, it's kind of ruined straps on this watch for me. So anyways, hopefully I can get over it. Poor me. The other thing that I don't like about this particular watch is this security latch right here. Like, I feel like the only thing that this does is really create a dangly piece of metal that's gonna scratch the hell out of the titanium. The other thing that I don't like, but I don't know if I like it or I dislike it, that's just titanium watches in general. And let me explain myself, right? So the thing with titanium is that it's a more premium material because it's lighter than metal. However, in my brain, like, awesome watches are heavy. So when you grab a watch that's made out of titanium and it's so light that it almost feels cheap. Like, consciously, I understand that, like, for a lot of things, lighter is better. But for me, also in my brain, something tells me that lighter is cheaper and less durable. And in the case of titanium, the less durable is kind of up for debate. Like, obviously, it's a super anti-corrosive material and it's great for divers, but it does scratch very easily. So this whole titanium craze, I still have to wrap my head around it. So I don't know if that's a like or a dislike. When I hold my King Samurai and I feel the weight of the King Samurai, like, I feel like I like the King Samurai more. But the King Samurai is just an overall better watch. But we'll talk about that later. Maybe in another video. If you guys want to see me put Helm and Seiko head to head and talk maybe about this watch versus the King Samurai, let me know. I definitely have a lot of thoughts on the matter. So if that's something that you're interested, leave me a comment and I will try to get to it. The last thing that I'll mention about the watch is that while the watch is, I think, about 40 millimeters, is much smaller in the diameter than something like a King Samurai, but it is a thick boy. I still think that it will work with most cuffs and sleeves and stuff like that, but King Samurai is thinner. So if you're a person that doesn't necessarily like super chunky watches, like, just know that this is definitely a chunky boy. All right, guys, well, that's it for this video. If you disagree with me and you think that Helm is absolutely better than Seiko and that I'm full of crap, feel free to give me a giant serving of whatever it is that I need to know in the comments. Feel free to prove me wrong. I'm super happy to see those comments. And the last thing for you guys, I know I'm giving you a lot of homework as far as comments go. Do you think Helm is worth the quality, worth the price, and worth the wait? Let me know how you feel about that in the comments. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video. See ya.